Hi, my name is Kim, and I have an addiction. Before I begin, I'd like to say that the opinions I express here today are either mine or the person that I quote, and do not belong to any particular 12-step program. Also, as stated in almost all meetings, take what you like and leave the rest. I will be switching around the words God, higher power, and divine, because like you use, 12-step members are allowed their own titles and names. As you probably know, 12-step spirituality started with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today you can find over 50 separate 12-step programs. These programs are for various drugs, including food and food behaviors. There are 12-step programs for various interpersonal relationships, such as codependency, love, and sex. There are 12-step programs for various behaviors, such as cluttering, gambling, and overspending. Within these, there are focused 12-step programs for different belief systems, such as Christianity, paganism, and Judaism. What is it that thousands of people have found in 12-step programs that bring them serenity? Well, let's start by talking about addiction. I defined addiction as a repeated behavior that harms us. Timothy McMahon King says, "We are all addicts. Human beings are addictive by nature." He says the question is not whether we're addicted, but how we're addicted and to what. Father Thomas Kettling says, "We all start our lives with basic needs, but because no parent is perfect and the world is a hazardous place, not all our needs are met, so we are drawn to harmful replacements." Richard Rohr says, "The 12-step program teaches us to see and tell the truth, and that shall set us free." He further says, "This counterintuitive wisdom will forever be resisted, denied, and avoided until it's forced upon us by some reality over which we are powerless. And if we're honest, we are powerless in the presence of full reality." What does all this mean? For those who have had less than an ideal childhood, we were not taught how to deal with our feelings, or even what our feelings were. So we found ourselves using coping mechanisms that worked as a child, but as an adult has us in a prison of behaviors that keeps us from our full potential. A large part of the 12-step program is personal growth. Becoming a better person starts with self-awareness, and self-awareness starts with reminding ourselves of our weaknesses and the person we want to be. It is a spiritual program of truth. 12-step spirituality asks us, where is my life not working as I'd like? How effective are my efforts? Do I really want my life to change? What changes would I like? And what is my personal invitation for this journey? Each of the 12 steps holds a spiritual principle, and the exact words vary between programs. Let's take a look at them. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. Spiritual principle is acceptance or honesty. This can be a hard thing to do, especially if we're holding down a job and have a house and are in a good relationship. The challenge for this step is to look at all the areas of our lives. Are we doing just enough at our jobs? Are we fully committed to all our relationships? In what ways are our addiction keeping us from the full life we could be having? Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Spiritual principle is hope. This is a hard step for people who are atheist, humanist, or were damaged by the religion of their childhood. Just like the UU principles, 12-step programs urge people to find something that is greater than themselves to pull strength from. For many, this might be the meeting group itself. For some, it's nature. For some, it's their higher self. And for some, it's love. I have yet to see a fellow who has kept the same higher power or the same relationship they had with the higher power that they grew up with. Most will say they had to fire their old God and hire a new one. These folks have expressed the fact that the God of their childhood was not a personal one that they could trust with issues of their addiction. Given the choice to choose our higher power is a relief, but I'm most likely preaching to the choir on this one. Step 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Spiritual principle is faith. What I hear most in step 3 are folks who have a hard time believing that God cares what they put in their body, or how they spend their money, or how they love. After all, he's got bigger things to worry about, such as world poverty and hunger. Having fellow sufferers around who show you what caring looks like can help you grow the needed faith to believe that God could do the same. So this step can be the beginning of having an intimate relationship with the divine. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Spiritual principle, courage. The idea in step 4 is not to keep some tally list of your wrongs, but rather to do a thorough look at yourself. The inventory includes both positive and negative things. It reminds me of the quote, "Nothing changes if nothing changes." And we can't change things if we don't look at them. As scary as this step sounds, it can actually be quite freeing. Long, detailed lists aren't needed, just an honest look at what is holding us back from being our full self. Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Spiritual principle is honesty or integrity. The idea of sharing our mistakes with others is not a new one. After all, Catholics have been doing confession for centuries now. What I hear most about this step is that when we share things we think we are the only ones who have done, and we feel absolutely horrible about, we discover from the person we're sharing with that they've done it too. I've heard many fifth steps from fellows, and I've never been shocked. The grace in this step is learning that we are no worse than others, and by learning that, we can see ourselves with more compassion. Step 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Spiritual principle, patience, or willingness. This step sounds so easy. Of course we want our defects of character removed. However, it's much harder than it sounds. To help myself with this step, I refer to these defects as self-defeating behaviors, because after all, that's what they really are. Are we really ready to have our coping mechanisms removed? Are we ready to face the world and be our true self without the behaviors that numb us through the hard times? I remember being told that I would be a different person when I gave up my self-defeating behaviors, and I was afraid of not knowing who I'd be or if I'd like the new me. I think of this step as moving out of the once was into the not quite yet. Step 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Spiritual principle, humility. The word humility can be hard for folks, especially those who grew up being told to be humble. If you grew up in a culture or a religion that taught you to be humble and to sacrifice yourself to the point of depriving yourself, humility can feel like more abuse. Maybe you recently found your strength, and now to be told to be humble again can be jarring. But I've learned that humility can also be accepting that the divine can work through you, or that the divine has given you gifts, and using and knowing that you have those gifts is part of being humble. I believe that putting your energy into believing that you are less than others, or you are too broken or unable to give service, it's actually being selfish, not being humble. The God of your understanding would not want you to hide your true self from the world. Step 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Spiritual principle, willingness. And step 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Spiritual principle, love. Or what we call cleaning house. The purpose of these steps is first, to fix relationships we had harmed, and second, to clear our conscience. I'm sure you all know how hard it is to carry around guilt when you have hurt someone, and how much better it feels to get it off your chest. A lot can be learned from taking these steps if we are open to listening to the person we're apologizing to. Practicing apologizing without tearing yourself down is a good skill to have in life. One of the most important people to add to your list of people we have harmed is ourselves. Addiction can have a toll on us physically, mentally, spiritually, and forgiving ourselves can be the hardest part of this step. For harms we have done to those who are no longer in our lives, we can make amends through letters, talking at grave sites, or making living amends, which means changing our ways so we don't do the same harm to anyone else. Steps 10 through 12 are what 12-steppers see as the foundation to their new life. Step 10, continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admitted it. Spiritual principle of integrity or perseverance. This step is repeating steps 4, 5, and 9 on an as-need basis. You'll hear 12-steppers calling this keeping their side of the street clean. Regularly checking our progress and staying away from our self-defeating behaviors doesn't mean that our life will be perfect, but it does help us to live life on life's terms. Step 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Spiritual principle of self-discipline or spiritual awareness. Once we have gone through the previous steps, we have a new and personal relationship with the divine of our choosing. Like other relationships, attention must be given to keep that relationship strong. UU principles of 3 and 4 encourage us to continue our spiritual growth and search for truth and meaning. The question I find 12-step fellows asking each other most often is, how is your relationship with your higher power? Most of the time, if not always, there is a correlation between that relationship and how their life is going. Prayer and meditation can go a long way in healing. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to other addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Spiritual principle is service. Even though I'm fairly new here, I see the principle of service all the time. And I can see those that give service have the most joyous spirits. Giving to others, however that may look, gives us the ability to keep what we have been given. The other point to this step is practicing these principles in all our affairs. The principles of 12-step can be used in every part of our lives. When life is hard, we have a term, 12-stepping a problem, which I have used for issues in my personal life, at work, and even with grief. Holding these spiritual principles, honesty, hope, faith, courage, integrity, willingness, humility, self-discipline, love, perseverance, spiritual awareness, and service can only make us a better person. For the past month, I've been asking fellows what 12-step has given them that they didn't have before. One said she only knew God in a religious relationship, but she now has a spiritual relationship with him. She was taught as a child to be with God on certain days of the week while in church, but now has everyday moments with the divine. She further explained that her religion didn't tell her how to experience God on a personal level. She was taught prayers to recite, but wasn't taught how to listen and sit in the presence of God. She now has informal conversations with her higher power, who gives the time to help her with her addiction. One woman told me that she had to begin by scrapping all her old ideas about what God was supposed to do for her and what she was supposed to do for God. She realized that to be in right relationship with the divine, she has to live without harming herself or others. She also realizes that the consciousness that created her problem cannot be the consciousness that solves the problem. One pointed out that by living life on life's terms, it's meant that she can surrender trying to control her life and give it to her HP. Most people spoke of their new ability to identify and accept their feelings. They no longer have to use behaviors to numb the painful parts of life. Meetings are a place where we can express and hear others express feelings. Just like Taylor in our story of all ages, just being heard is enough. Many folks have shared that they now have a personal higher power who loves them unconditionally and who encourages them rather than threatens them. One mentioned that she finds more love in the basement of the church at a 12-step meeting than she finds upstairs in the church. Several people have shared with me that since working their recovery with the 12 steps, small talk is harder for them. Being with a group of people who are willing to be vulnerable and to share their personal stories and growth have spoiled them, so they now seek out more meaningful relationships. All of them, including me, feel the world would be a better place if everyone belonged to a 12-step program. Amen, and blessed be. Now, please rise in